talk about the marketing consultation, getting listings, which of course in any market is key to being successful. But in a market where sellers have expectations that are perhaps being fueled by the media and hearsay, that sort of thing, I think it's really important for us to drill down on how we can effectively manage that process. So I want us to kind of walk through some of what you do in going after a listing. And so the first thing that I want to know is how you research your sellers, if you do, before you meet with them.
That is a great question. Most of my clients that call in are a lots of times a past client referral from another client. Um, and so I kind of it's I know who they know, and so that's how they come to me. So I do research them. How did you find me? Who referred you? I always ask that question, and anybody on my team will ask, "Hey, how did you find us?" And so that's always important. And so we have a process for taking that phone call.
Okay.
Um, but for researching the potential seller, we always use OWL. And so we automatically go to OWL, and I use OWL, the Online Wealth Lookup, and we are a huge fan of that the Institute provides. And it's an incredible resource that if you're not using it, you should be for your sellers, because what it will tell you is any of the political donations that they've had, more information. It just helps better prepare you. So we always do an OWL lookup, and we research the property, we pull preliminary title. We do everything under the sun that we can in advance for researching that seller. I think it's critical to know if they're in other parts of the country, if they're going to be, if I can see, I will tell you if there's been a sale in Arizona, if there's a boat involved, if there's a plane involved. All of that information is more information. Is going to help you better go into the listing appointment. And since we're talking about OWL, I use that in our listing as a listing tool. And I will gauge whether or not hey, I know that you have a plane. How come you haven't talked about your plane? Though I will judge that in the appointment, what I bring up and what I don't. And OWL allows you to vet your potential buyers. So it's also a listing tool. So it's a double-edged sword for me, or double-edged tool for me, for not only the sellers, but also buyers with OWL.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you're using that tool. For our listeners who may not be members of the Institute, I just want to make sure that you understand what we're talking about. The Online Wealth Lookup, or OWL, is a benefit of membership in the Institute, and it's a partnership with Wealth Engine that utilizes a database of more than 20 million wealthy individuals. And it does provide lots of information that is helpful. For those that may not have access to that tool, do you find that general Google search or any other tips for finding out more about people before you meet with them?
Yeah, so exactly. So we do a Google search. We do OWL, Google. We will also pull up. We have CoreLogix in our market, and we can pull CoreLogix reports and things like that on the property itself. Some of our historic properties that we work on, we will get in touch with our local library historians, and we will pull, and we have a friend over there will get us images. And so we will potentially walk into a listing appointment with a historic photo from that property, or even if it's a historic photo of a family member. So we have a historic property coming up, and we have where families are legacy families. We call them in our market, and so we will already have some pictures of grandpa or something already before we go into the listing appointment.
Oh, wow. That's got to knock their socks off.
Yeah, so they're very impressed by not only but being able to research and dig deep and get as much information as we can. Yeah.
Got it. And so let me ask, do you typically have just one meeting, right? Like a traditional listing appointment, or do you use a two visit approach, or when do you decide what you might need?
That is the $1,000,000 question, and that is so it depends. So I'm not. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm only a two-step," or I do it one and done. If I don't have to go back, I don't have to go back. I don't operate that way. Everything's in shades of gray. So that's our clause, is that everything is in shades of gray. So it depends on what it is. So I have farmed and marketed a particular geographic area, the Lakewood region neighborhood, the lakes, I call it. So if it's on one of my three specialized lakes that I work, I more than likely will already know their house. I will already likely know a neighbor, things like that. So I've already memorized everything on those three lakes. So I just did two listings on there, both about $1,000,000 on one of the lakes. And when I went there, I already knew the street, I knew the house, I knew where I was going. I already had a ballpark idea of pricing in my head, and those were both one and dones. And so I will use that if it's a special area that I know. Yesterday, for example, I go to a house and it is probably the most over the top coming to America type of a house, totally decked out, and probably the worst possible neighborhood that you could ever live,
Oh my.
with a pot shop next door. So
Oh,
so I mean those types of where I've got to dig deep for research and stuff. And if I feel like really need to narrow in on the pricing, I will do a two-step process. But if
sure.
in something that I've specialized in, I will be a one and done.
That makes perfect sense to me. But if you're walking into something that's a little bit beyond your comfort zone, it is a good idea to consider that two-step process so that you're really providing good advice on pricing and positioning too, right? Because your marketing strategy is going to change based on a unique home like that.
Right, right. And what we do too is I'm always prepared when I go into that appointment. I'm a little bit old school, a little bit new school. So I have all my paperwork can either be DocuSigned and or done in person. So I don't miss an opportunity to get a signature. So I always have that paperwork ready to go when I go into that appointment. I don't want to have to go back to the office and type up a listing agreement.
Sure. If somebody says, "Where do I sign?" You want to be
You
ready
have
for that.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So a delicate balance between being jinxy
Yeah.
and being prepared.